Hi, my name is Ernst, and this is the first video I upload on the topic of Marxism, and the first video I upload whatsoever. In this series, I will try to explain what is meant by the term Marxism, and in this video, I will give a short explanation of its historical origins, and a small biography of Marx's early life. Marxism, as a way of analysis, originates from the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. Opinions differ on how it is to be defined, but that it comes from the works of Marx and Engels is something that appears in all definitions. I'll get back to this later. First, let us talk a bit about the period Marx and Engels lived in. The age in which they lived, 19th century Europe, can be described as a breaking point between the old and the new, between feudalism and capitalism. Most of all, however, the 19th century was an age of revolution. While the earlier French Revolution of 1789 and other political revolutions may be what immediately pops up in your head, arguably the most important revolution in the 1800s was the Industrial Revolution. While the previously mentioned political revolutions have a clear start date, the process of industrialization can only be distinguished once it has reached a certain extent. It began on the British Isles in the 18th century. The preconditions that allowed for this process to begin was, among others, overpopulation in the countryside, the expansion of wool production and a multitude of technological innovations. Increasing demands for proper means of transportation of goods and people led to the development of canals and later railroads. Factories were built anywhere suitable, and villages grew to cities. But the Industrial Revolution didn't just change the ways of communication and transportation. It changed society on a deeper level as well, with its biggest consequence being the development of two new classes, the industrial capitalists and the industrial workers. The industrial capitalists are and were those in ownership of the tools and raw materials used for production, known as the means of production, who then buy labor from the industrial workers in order to produce a surplus value. I totally understand if this seems confusing right now. I'll get back to it in later videos. Now that we have a roughly drawn outline of the climate in Europe in the 19th century, let us talk a bit about Karl Marx himself. Karl Marx was born on the 5th of May 1818 in the city of Trier in the Rhine province, at that time a part of the Prussian state. Little is known for certain about his early life. The first records of him appear at the time of him graduating from upper secondary school in Trier. It is obvious from the records that Marx was a good student. However, he was by no means excellent, and nor was his behavior entirely uncontroversial. After graduating from upper secondary school, Marx went on to study law at the University of Bonn for a short amount of time before going to Berlin to also study law. It was at this time Marx began to mention Hegel, a man who would come to have a very strong influence on his thoughts. Georg Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel was a German philosopher who lived between 1770 to 1831. Hegel has had a very strong influence on many philosophers, from Nietzsche to Heidegger, and on many different branches of philosophy as well. In 1837, 1 year after going to Berlin, Marx joined the radical Doctors' Club, a group of so-called young Hegelians. Hegelian is simply a word used to denote someone following Hegel's philosophy, who were opposed to the conservative, old Hegelians. At this time Marx also met Bruno Bauer, a theologian Marx would come to criticize quite heavily in a later work. Around 1840, the university in Berlin became hostile towards radical thinkers, which led Marx to get his PhD from the university in Jena instead. Because the university didn't employ him after finishing his doctoral thesis, he started working as a journalist for a few different papers with Arnold Rouge, another young Hegelian. Marx wrote primarily about the censorship in Prussia. After the papers were shut down by the state in 1943, Marx and his wife Jenny von Westphalen went to Paris. Marx's time in Paris would come to be very important. He came in contact with the communists, he met Friedrich Engels for the first time, and developed his philosophy quite a bit. It was in Paris that Marx came in contact with the works of Ludwig Feuerbach as well. Ludwig Feuerbach was another student of Hegel, but unlike many of the other young Hegelians, Feuerbach was a materialist. Now what in the world is materialism, you may ask? This series will continue, but I'll focus more on the content of Marx's writings instead of on his and Engels' biography. In the next video, I'll go through what historical materialism is.